Have you ever stood at the threshold of fear, your heart tight with dread, your breath short as the winds of uncertainty rise? What do we do when chaos breaks upon our lives, when the storm is not merely outside, but within? Tonight, let us journey together to the waters of ancient Galilee, where night descends and the mistress of wind stirs the lake to a boiling tumult. Fishermen, strong, sinewed men accustomed to these depths, are none the less cowed, but among them lies a teacher unafraid of the howling dark. We open the scroll to the Gospel of Mark, chapter 4, verses 35 through 41, an account concise and yet brimming with profound wonder. It is evening. The sun has drawn near to the horizon, casting gold and violet across the Sea of Galilee's surface. Capernaum's stone houses fade behind while, on the dusty shore, the crowds, breathless and eager, recede into shadows. Jesus has taught by the sea all day, his words challenging, inviting, and now, as twilight deepens, he turns to his disciples. Let us go across to the other side. They are tired, yet there is purpose in his voice. Without delay, they leave the gathered multitudes, taking him just as he is into the boat. Behind, smaller vessels follow, catching the promise of his presence into the unknown. But calm does not linger on Galilee's expanse. The Sea of Galilee, small yet infamous for sudden, violent tempests, is hemmed by hills that funnel the wind without warning. Storms rise quickly here, a familiar peril to those who make their living on these waters. Yet tonight, the violence feels unnatural, ominous. It is here, upon these ancient swells, that Mark paints his scene. The wind surges like a beast uncaged. Waves rear and slap the boat, cresting high, breaking over worn wooden boards. Cold water floods the hull. Every muscle strains to bail, to row, to hold steady, but the boat teeters on the verge of capsizing. Imagine, canvas sails snapped, voices calling out to one another, pale moonlight flickering between shifting clouds. This is not a gentle storm. Even seasoned fishermen, Andrew, Peter, James, and John, feel dread coil in their bellies. The sky mingles darkness and silver spray. Thunder echoes across the blackened waters. The disciples, men weathered and strong, are brought low by the might of creation unleashed. Yet, in the stern, where a cushion offers what little comfort there can be, Jesus sleeps. His head rests amidst the tumult, untroubled, undisturbed. The Lord of wind and water lying in vulnerability, in peace. This, then, is our first great mystery. How does one sleep surrounded by chaos? How can the Son of Man, worn from teaching, yet serene, find rest when all else is in uproar? The disciples cannot understand. Their fear crests along with the water. Mark's words are vivid, spare. They woke him and said to him, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" It is a cry that spans centuries. The sudden, desperate questioning of God's care when danger looms. Do you not care? A question as raw as the wind, as old as humanity's trembling before the unknown. What do we see in this cry? Not only fear, but a yearning for assurance. In moments when we are overwhelmed, when the waves of circumstance threaten to undo us, do we not too wonder, does God heed our peril? Or is he, somehow, asleep to our distress? Jesus rouses. Mark lingers here for but a breath, yet in that brief pause the story pivots. All eyes turn to him. His presence in the storm is not frantic but calm, as if he occupies a realm beyond the frenzy. He rises. The teacher, wet from spray, stands before the shrieking wind and lashing waves. He rebukes the wind, megal-lalaps, the great storm. "Peace, be still," he says. The words cut through the maelstrom, commanding not as a mere man nor magician, but as one who rules the forces of nature itself. At once a great calm. The transformation is stunning, violent tempest stilled to breathless silence. The sea is now as smooth as polished stone. Echoes of thunder fade. The air grows soft, expectant. The boat rocks gently, water dripping from its sides, as the shivering disciples look from the now-tamed sea to the man who commands it. The world, it seems, holds its breath. Jesus turns to them. "Why are you so afraid? Have you still no faith?" The question is tender, sharp, haunting. It is not only rebuke, but invitation, a call to trust when trust seems unthinkable. In that moment, a new fear takes root, not fear of wind or wave, but of the one in their midst. "Who then is this?" they whisper to each other, "that even the wind and sea obey him?" Let us linger here, because this question, "Who is this?" echoes through every valley of fear, every season of testing, every searching night. We must look more closely, for the biblical narrative, though brief, is loaded with ancient resonances and subtle ironies. The Sea of Galilee was both boundary and bridge, feared and fished, a place of provision and peril. The Hebrew imagination sometimes associated the sea with chaos, the demonic, the unpredictable, an echo of primordial waters in Genesis, over which the Spirit of God once hovered, bringing order from formless deep. These disciples were not strangers to storms. Raised amidst such winds, they'd mastered the art of survival. Yet on this night, their skills are not enough. All the expertise, all the muscle, all the years on water, insufficient. The storm strips them bare, leaving only trembling souls before the vastness of nature and the presence of something greater. Jesus, however, remains unshaken. His rebuke is not incantation nor mere wishful hope. It is command, "Peace, be still." Across the scriptural witness, only God commands the elements with a word. Psalm 107 rings with an ancient parallel. They cried to the Lord in their trouble, and he brought them out of their distress. He made the storm be still, and the waves of the sea were hushed. The gospel writer is drawing us to an old truth in a new key, a vision of Jesus as the incarnate Lord, standing where only God may stand. But let us return to fear, the heart of the tale. The disciples' terror is familiar, too human to be dismissed. Their cry, "Do you not care?" betrays the frailty of faith, the way trust can collapse in the jaws of danger. Why does Jesus sleep? The text offers no direct answer. Perhaps, in his full humanity, he is exhausted, for sacred vocation often brings weariness as well as wonder. Perhaps, more deeply, his sleep embodies the peace that is trust, a rest rooted in confidence that God is sovereign, whether in storm or in calm. The ancient rabbis wrote of perfect faith as a posture of surrender, a rest that trusts God in the darkness of unknowing. The sleeping Jesus, then, becomes a living parable, security found not in absence of trouble, but in the presence of God amid trouble. Recall, too, their initial departure. Let us go across to the other side. It is Jesus who initiates. It is his idea that sets them on this course. Sometimes it is faith itself that leads us straight into storms, by divine design, not accident or neglect. Mark's narrative, so terse and vivid, chooses not to resolve every question. Did the disciples expect deliverance, or had they counted only on their own strength until it failed? Their rebuke, "Do you not care we are perishing?" is not just accusation, but confession, revealing faith tested at its breaking point. Here a subtle teaching glimmers. Fear does not disqualify us from the company of Christ. Rather, it becomes the place of encounter, where our true reliance is revealed and the depth of his care displayed. The storm, violent as it is, proves to be a threshold rather than an end. Let us pause and consider the occupied boat, the air heavy with the scent of wet wood, the anxious glances shared by men who believed they understood the world. Now their comprehension is undone, their categories for God appended by Jesus' authority. The awe that follows the storm is not relief, but wonder wrapped in trembling. Who is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him? This is the true climax of the story, not the silencing of the storm, but the dawning realization that Jesus is more than they imagined, Lord of creation in their midst. Their fear is transformed, no longer dread of dying, but awe in the presence of divine mystery. Throughout Scripture, those who meet God's power face a similar response. Abraham, Moses, Isaiah, and Job all encounter the holy, and their reaction is not casual embrace, but reverent, trembling wonder. So here, the disciples are overcome, not by the storm's violence, but by the revelation that the Lord of all has chosen to dwell among them, with them in their frailty. But let us contemplate. What spiritual wisdom do we glean in this tale of wind and water? What does it teach us about fear, faith, and the trustworthiness of God? The passage tells us that storms will come. Faith is not insurance against adversity. It is, rather, the means through which we withstand it. The journey to the other side is undertaken at Christ's command, suggesting that obedience may lead us into, not around, the tempest. Yet in the midst, his presence abides. He is with us, even in our fear, even in the moments when we believe he sleeps or is distant. The silence of God is not the absence of care. The sleeping Christ invites us to trade anxious toil for the stillness of trust. His peace, deeper than circumstance, is not ignorance of danger, but confidence in the Father's hands. In the disciples' cry, we see humanity exposed. Do you not care that we are perishing? Yet the gospel does not record Jesus' anger, but his invitation. Why are you so afraid? Have you still no faith? It is not condemnation, but a gentle unveiling. Faith is not the denial of fear, but the choice to trust God's presence even that. Faith, pistis, was understood in the ancient world as loyalty, an attachment of heart amid uncertainty. Let us not mistake. The world's seas remain wild, the future uncertain. But the hand that calms the storm is the same hand that leads us into it. The very waves that terrify may become instruments of revelation. There are times the Lord stills the tempest, but there are also times he stills our souls while the storm yet rages. The promise is not always that danger disappears, but that we are never abandoned. Let us explore a little deeper into the culture and context. The Sea of Galilee is more than a place. It is a character, a boundary between Jew and Gentile, between familiar and foreign. In crossing over, Jesus leads his disciples from the region of Galilee to the territory of the Gerasenes, and with this, hints at the expanding reach of God's mission. A passage not just of geography, but of mercy. To embark at night was risky. for the lake's reputation for sudden storms was well known. The timing was not incidental. It heightens the sense of vulnerability, reinforcing the theme that discipleship is not always safe, but always purposeful. And notice, other boats were with him. Mark alone includes this subtle detail, a picture perhaps of the church in community, many vessels traversing the sea, all within the orbit of the Christ. They too endured the storm. Though the text is silent, we may imagine their faith tested likewise. The ancient church saw in this passage an allegory, the boat as the church tossed by persecution and trouble, the presence of Christ ensuring survival, though sometimes he seems silent, even asleep. Augustine commented, "When you have to bear trials, you are sailing in a great storm. You cry out to Jesus to wake up and save you." Through the centuries, believers have found solace in this image. The God who does not shield us from struggle, but is present within it, speaking peace into our confusion. But let us not reduce the mystery to metaphor alone. The event as described is concrete, historical, a decisive manifestation of divine authority. The calming of the storm points beyond comfort to the identity of Jesus himself, calling forth faith not for its own sake, but because of who he is. When the disciples ask, "Who then is this?" they touch upon the heart of revelation. Encountering Christ shatters complacency, disrupts old certainties, and invites new trust. Let us pause here and reflect. How often, when we feel overcome, do we forget who is in our boat? How quick are we to suppose ourselves abandoned, when perhaps the provision we most require is not escape, but presence? And what of Jesus' words? "Why are you so afraid? Have you still no faith?" They come after, not before, the deliverance. Faith is not prerequisite for his saving power, but called forth in response. He meets our trembling with patience, offers his peace despite our questions. Yet paradox remains. Why does God allow the storm? Scripture offers no simple answer. Sometimes life's perils are not punishment, nor obstacles to faith, but invitations to a deeper trust. When fear unmasks our self-sufficiency, it presses us to yield, to rest in the one who is greater than our strength. The psalmist sings, "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me." It is the presence of God, not deliverance from every storm, that secures the soul. Let us remember as well the silence of Jesus before he is awakened. In Scripture, God's silence is often a space for growth, a sacred gap in which true faith is formed. Job, Elijah, David, Habakkuk all know the silence of heaven. It is seldom comfortable, but always purposeful. When Christ wakes and calms the sea, the miracle is not merely in the external stillness, but in the transformation of fear to awe, chaos to trust. Imagine now the hush on the boat, the disciples drenched, shivering, eyes wide, hearts pounding. The terror of destruction has passed, replaced by the humbling awareness that they have witnessed the impossible, the holy. Who then is this? The question lingers, as it must. For to know the Christ is a journey deeper than any sea. Each storm endured carves new places for faith, new room for reverent wonder. What then can we embrace as we ponder this sacred mystery? Perhaps that to follow Christ is to risk the storm, to be willing to leave the safety of shore when he calls, not for the promise of ease, but for the assurance of his presence. Perhaps that faith is forged not in perpetual calm, but precisely in the wildness of wind and wave, where we discover not our sufficiency, but his faithfulness. Perhaps that in our most frightened hours, we are invited to awake the presence of Christ, not to command him, but to confess our need, to seek his peace. And perhaps the deepest secret is that the storm is not always meant to be stilled outside, but within. The wind and wave obey him. So, too, may our hearts find their quiet in his word. As our journey through Mark's account draws to a close, let us dwell in the silence that follows the storm, unhurried, attentive, open to the questions that remain. If you, dear listener, are now enduring winds that threaten to overwhelm, may you remember, the one who commands the sea is near, even if he seems to sleep. The cry, "Do you not care that we are perishing?" is heard, and the answer, though rarely as we expect, is always attended by his mighty presence. The story does not end with answers, but with awe. Faith grows not by certainty, but by trust, trust in the one whose power envelops even our trembling. The Lord of the storm, who rides the waves and speaks peace into the night, is with us. I invite you to pause, to let the mystery remain, to hold the question, who is this, that even the winds and waves obey him? And what quiet courage might be birthed in you as you entrust your own storms to his care? If this story has stirred your spirit, I welcome you to share your reflections, your questions, your fears, your journeys below. Let us walk this ancient path together, seekers on a sea whose destination is promised, though the way be wild. For more stories unearthed from the sacred past, mysteries left open by Scripture's wisdom, I invite you to journey with us again. Let us pursue, with reverence and wonder, the deep things of God. May the peace of Christ, who slept through the storm and stilled it with a word, guard your heart and quiet your soul, both now and always. Go now with this blessing into your night, into your storm, knowing you are never alone.